Good day, chaps. So today's video is going to cover and clarify one of those odd vehicles which has always been skewered and squiffed by the internet experts and has led to a kind of convoluted mess of designations and theories. It's the Cromwell II. The vehicle's correct details and information were found at the National Archives recently by both myself and the Cromwell shepherd herself, Lauren Child, on our last visit. So, before people get too excited about the idea of Cromwell II, however, there are a few key things to clarify. Firstly, this is not a sequel vehicle. It's not a missing link between Cromwell or Comet or some proposed replacement for the Cromwell. It is just part of the Cromwell regular family. And so we're going to delve into that a little bit more. The origins of what would become the Cromwell begins back in 1940, with a desire to develop the replacement for the Crusader and Covenanter cruiser tanks. This led to a few designs: the A23 from Vauxhall, the A24 from Nuffields, and a third design submitted from the Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Works. The Nuffield design was in many ways just a beefed up Crusader, and retained the same engines and transmission, as well as other parts, which made retooling the lines a lot simpler, while the Birmingham design was outwardly very similar, but with different tracks, a long suspension, and updated shock absorbers. Although at a quick glance the most obvious difference in the A24 is that it lacks the rear pagoda-style louver off the back deck. These designs were submitted to the War Office, and Nuffield's A24 concept won, although whether due to merit or a misplaced favouritism, which ran rampant at the time, is open for debate. Thus the first 6 tanks were ordered under the name Heavy Cruiser A24. However, in May 1941, Leylands had been working alongside the brilliant Rolls-Royce engineer William Robotham at the Clan Foundry in Belper, attempting to convert damaged Merlin III aircraft engines into tank engines, forming the Leyland Meteor. Leylands had been working on this engine for some time, in the aim to fit them into Crusaders, and had managed to fit 2 of these with Leyland Meteor engines, with the poor Crusader maxing out at over 80 km an hour before shredding its tracks and hitting a tree. But the point had been proven. The engine not only worked, but was far superior to the old Liberty, and would be ideal for the new cruisers. However, shortly after, Leyland suddenly got cold feet over the issue, saying that he had concerns over cooling issues, which had hindered the Crusaders and Covenanter tanks, and although there is no evidence to suggest this was an issue with Meteor, it may have been backroom pressure from Nuffields, who once again refused to toe the line and insisted he would still be using the old Liberty engines, which is possibly a foreshadowing of Leyland's not being able to make sensible choices when it comes to engines and tanks. Either way, this led there to being 3 separate cruiser tanks put into production, all with the name Cromwell. There was A24 Cromwell I from Nuffields, the A27L Cromwell II from Leylands, and the A27M Cromwell III from Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Works, with the L for Liberty and M for Meteor. Sometime during this mess, somebody sensibly at the Ministry of Supply noted that having 3 different tanks with 3 different parts all called Cromwell was going to be a logistical nightmare, and so new names were allocated, becoming the A24 Cavalier, A27L Centaur, and the A27M Cromwell. Now, while these vehicles are all very interesting, and I have so many weird and wonderful variants to go over in time, let's circle back to our Cromwell II tank. This vehicle should slot into one of the sub-series in the A27M family. So by this I mean you have Cromwell Mark 1, 2, 3 and so on until around the Mark 8. And then within these you have a sub-series in different hull types, A to F, etc. As you can see, it's a little bit of a mess. And once you add in the fact that those Centaurs we mentioned earlier were later given Meteor engines, also got called Cromwell, notably the Marks 3s and 4, you can see why it trips people over. So now we've established that, well, surely Cromwell II is a logical sequel to the Cromwell Mark 1. Well, not quite. You see, if you want something that should be simple and straightforward, becoming convoluted and turned into an utter pig's ear, you can always rely on British industry to achieve this. While the whole Cromwell debacle was ongoing and various machines were being made, this turret was being designed by Vauxhalls at the same time as the other Cromwell tanks were being made. This was due to the disappointing initial outing of the Churchill tank, made by Vauxhalls, and the original desire by some at the War Office for them to drop that series and join the Cromwell programme. Thus they began to design their own fittings and turrets, but not the hulls, and logically, as they also designed Churchill turrets, there would be some similarities. However, they are not actually Churchill turrets, as is sometimes quoted. The new turrets, of which at least 2 were made, were of a composite type, with a cast main body and a welded steel roof. The turret itself was not built by Vauxhalls at all, rather by 2 other firms. The main body of the turret, the cast bit, was made by the ESC, or the English Steel Corporation, who also made some of the early regular Cromwell turrets, as well as the tortoise casts later on. While the plates at the top and bottom were IT80 steel made by the Wesso foundry, who also welded the turret together, which was then mounted to a Vauxhall-designed turret ring on the hull given to them. Apart from the turret ring, of which there is no real details I found, the only other obvious major difference is this vehicle had the Vauxhall driver's door, which was a single-piece hatch designed to prevent snagging under the turret lip. The same hatch can also be found on the later Cromwell welded hulls. It's also worth pointing out that there is another odd Cromwell out there, part of an up-armouring project, that sometimes is also listed as a Vauxhall Cromwell, or Cromwell II. It's neither, rather an entirely different project to increase the armour of service Cromwells. So what happened to our turret, and why did it not enter service? Well, that's down to a few reasons. The first was while Vauxhalls were to switch to Cromwell in place of Churchill, in the interim the Churchill was made more or less adequate, after some pretty extensive overhauls. And adding the fact that with delays around the Meteor entering service, which took 2 years longer than it should, then one can argue that Vauxhalls frankly had better stuff to do. But more importantly was the result from the firing trials. The first of these took place with turret 001, which was mounted on a Cromwell mock-up hull without running gear or guns. The vehicle was struck with a mixture of rounds, from small arms to 25-pounder high explosive, and overall the turret performed well. A notable issue was found with the revolver port, which allowed splash to enter via small arms fire and was marked up for needing improvement. The bigger issue was the lower bulge around the turret, which deflected rounds into the upper deck if struck roughly 1 inch above it. This aside, they felt that the welding held up well and the armour itself was sound. However, the aforementioned points would need to be fixed. It's also worth pointing out one oddity here, which is yet to be explained, and that's the upside down and incorrect casting number on turret 2, which is fitted to the display model. This turret is rather odd in that not only does it share the same serial number on one side as turret number 1, 70,000, but on the other side of turret 2 is a different cast number upside down. All the other turrets have this the right way round, and the matching numbers on either side, so possibly a cock-up at the factory? Who knows? The original prototype next then appears at Shoebury-Ness, where it underwent firing trials again, to test various fittings for in-service Cromwells, and they record the vehicle as number 2638, so we can confirm it's the same vehicle, but it's no longer in a running condition. The vehicle is fitted with a turret ring traverse gearbox bolted to the inner turret wall, and tests are done to see how it reacts to being struck by 25-pounder high explosive rounds. The final pictures of the tank are seen in July 1945 at the same range, where the vehicle is once again used as a test vehicle, this time to record the damage done to tillers and driver's apparatus inside the lower nose from shot and mine attacks. The vehicle is now in a bit of a sorry state, and it appears the turret has been dislodged at some point and the track guards are missing. The name The Jinx has been added to the vehicle's turret, possibly as it brought bad luck. Either way, the hull is subjected to several shots and measurements are taken before they detonate mines under the forward left side. After this, the vehicle disappears from history, and today no trace is left of either the Cromwell Mark II turrets, save a few photos and this information I managed to track down in the archives. Well guys, I hope you like that oddity. The Cromwell II, or Vauxhall Cromwell, comes up from time to time in random forums, so I figured it'd be worth a shout out. And if you did like this video, give us a like or subscribe or press one of those buttons down below that does something. And until next time, toodle pip.